Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2012 to 2013 series Talon, part of DC's The New 52. Yes, I know. Ramsey's covering another comic I've never heard of. Why does he keep doing this? I don't know, you guys. I guess I just hate success. Or maybe it's because I said I'd cover every New 52 comic ever, and damn it, I meant it. Though I have to say, it's surprising to me that this comic isn't better known. Because once Scott Snyder created the Court of Owls for his Batman run, DC did what any mega corporation would do when they had an obvious hit on their hands. They capitalized the hell out of it. The Court of Owls would not only dominate the first two story arcs of Snyder's Batman, but would be the first major tie-in for all Bat Family titles, and there were a bunch. You might say a parliament of them. Cause that's the collective noun for owls. Never mind. One of the Talons, which is what the Court of Owls called their army of mysterious owl-themed ninja assassins, would appear in Batgirl multiple times and even join the New 52 Birds of Prey. The Court would also be part of the first technically post-New 52 Bat Family crossover as the secret villain behind the Robin War. I mean, they're on the cover, so not that secret, but you know what I mean. And further than that, we would get this comic, an entire series about yet another of the Court's Talons. The series would be written by James Tynion IV, who is by now a very well-known name in the comic book world for writing some big-name series, including ones I've covered on the channel, like Batman/TMNT and The Backstagers, or for his 4-year run on Detective Comics for the DC Rebirth. But at the time, he had mostly just worked on backup stories with Snyder during the New 52 Batman, including some of the backstory setup for Snyder's Court of Owls saga. So while being lead writer on a comic would be a pretty new thing for Tynion, he was also somewhat uniquely suited to create a story that would further explore the secret history of the Court of Owls through the lens of a Talon who didn't become the Dark Avenger the Court wanted him to be, and instead would end up trying his hand at being a superhero. Let's see just how that goes for him and take this away. The comic opens on Calvin Rose, our namesake character. He's not a Talon yet, but instead just a little kid locked in a cage by his father who abandoned him there to die. Which, wow, that's a dark introduction to a character. Fortunately, Calvin manages to break free and runs away, eventually leading to him joining Haley's Circus, where he trains as an escape artist and proves to have great skill at it. His skills are so impressive, in fact, that the Court of Owls decides to forego their usual pick of acrobats in order to have Calvin be their next pick as Talon. The justification is that, in the modern day, with all the security systems everywhere, an escape artist might be better at getting in and out of places. I personally feel like that's a bit of a weak justification, but it's also probably not important. As part of the Court's Talon training, they put him in their giant underground labyrinth where he was asked to kill his predecessor and then left to wander the labyrinth until he went insane, like we saw happen to Batman in my last video. But instead, also like Batman, Calvin manages to find a way out of the labyrinth, much to the Court's surprise. Instead of being angry though, they decide that this is an indication that he's actually ready and they send him out on his first job. That job was in relation to a corporation called Securitas, a company that, as you can probably guess, designs security equipment. Shocker, I know. Their CEO, Eric Washington, was a crazed genius, paranoid that the court was coming for him. Which they were, so not paranoia, I guess. When he died, his patents passed on to his daughter Casey, who didn't keep herself as locked away from the world, and so Calvin the Talon was sent to end the Washington line. Only when he got to Casey's apartment, he discovered that she had a 2-year-old daughter named Sarah. Unable to bring himself to kill either of them, Calvin instead knocks out Casey and kidnaps the both of them, taking them away to some location as he flees from his role in the Court of Owls. Where exactly they go, we don't really learn, because then the comic jumps 5 years into the future. That's because everything so far was in the first issue, which was actually issue 0. In the New 52, issue 0 was always an issue set 5 years in the past of the then current continuity, as a means of helping readers know how we got to the present day without actually covering the entire time period. So in the present, we see Calvin returning to Gotham after 5 years by jumping out of a Zeppelin in the hopes that doing so would allow him to enter Gotham undetected. He's returning after hearing that the court was destroyed by Batman during the Night of the Owls and desires to learn for himself if this is true or not. He's been on the run since the day that he rescued Casey Washington, and if the court is gone, then that would mean he doesn't have to run anymore. But while their nest initially appears empty, Cal is almost immediately attacked by this super badass looking Lady Talon, who assures him that there's no way the court was completely defeated. Seems Batman didn't take the Ash Ketchum advice to heart. Calvin almost manages to get away from the Lady Talon, but ends up passing out from the effort. Luckily for him, he's rescued by a mysterious stranger who was alerted to his presence earlier, and brought to the man's secret underground base. This strange old man is named Sebastian Clark, and claims to have a bit of a grudge with the Court of Owls after his father attempted to write a secret history of the court. When the Owls learned of this book, they had everyone involved killed and every copy destroyed, except for little Sebastian and his copy of the book. After amassing a fortune overseas, he's come back to Gotham to get revenge on the court, and sees Calvin as his chance. Cal isn't too interested with the court seeming to be gone, but Clark insists they're just regrouping, and when they come back, they'll be stronger than ever. Still, it's only when Clark claims that Casey and Sarah will be in harm's way should that happen, that Calvin finally suits up in a new version of his Talon suit that Sebastian made for him and agrees to help. I'm sure it's not weird at all that he just had that suit ready for you. Don't worry about it. The first place they go is the Orchard Hotel, a place the court had apparently been keeping an absolutely massive secret room called Eden, filled with massive amounts of expensive and illegal merchandise hidden inside, which would allow them to quickly rebuild their fortunes should they need to. Despite running across the Talon protecting it, who happens to be the son of the guy who built the hotel, Calvin had already set a bunch of incendiary charges, which melts the room into a massive solid rock, inaccessible from the rest of the building, and the Talon chooses to go down with the ship. Next, we head to New York City to attempt to drain the court's secret bank accounts, which are for some reason kept there, I guess, instead of, I don't know, like the Cayman Islands or something. But as soon as he gets to New York, he's attacked by some mysterious assailants and knocked out, only to wake up and find himself captured by Casey. It seems that after Calvin and Casey had gone on the run together, and had maybe even fallen for each other a little, Calvin decided to separate from her out of the belief that it would protect her and Sarah from the court, which Casey did not appreciate, wanting to face the court head on rather than run from them forever. In the intervening time, she started a camp of other runaways from evil organizations, like this lady, Anya Volkova, who was a member of the League of Assassins, and this guy, Joey, who always seems to be reading comics, and judging from his snake tattoos is maybe former Basilisk, or maybe the Snake Gang like that dreamy Asp guy from Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. So dreamy. Calvin warns Casey the court might be after them, but she's not afraid and even wants to help Calvin and Sebastian take down the court. To prove herself, her team joins them in their mission for some fun heist-style antics as they break into the Owl Bank and attempt to rob the funds. The heist goes pretty well until a very different type of Talon shows up. This is Felix Harmon, though while he was alive, he was known as the Gotham Butcher. He was a sadistic serial killer who took way too much joy in killing both his victims and those he happened to run into along the way. Because of this, the court buried him in the Tomb of the Unworthy, a special tomb separate from the main Talon tomb that we saw in Batman. But apparently they decided Felix was the one they most needed to confront Calvin, and he certainly proves to be more than enough, nearly killing Calvin, who barely manages to slip away at the last minute by perfectly timing a drop down into the subway system onto a passing train. But it seems that despite his confidence in his own abilities, Harmon still placed a tracker on Calvin and follows him to Casey's base. Afraid to face him directly, they abandon the base and flood its tunnels with the Hudson River to drown the giant spooky Talon man away. Sure that he's gone, Casey moves in with Cal and Sebastian, and they all move on to their next target in taking down the court, Securitas Island. When Casey disappeared with Calvin all those years ago, the world assumed she was dead, and so with her not having left the company to anyone else, it ended up falling into court hands after all. And that included the headquarters, a veritable fortress built in the center of a lake outside of Gotham, guarded by giant fans intended to rip apart anyone attempting to access by water without permission. Pretty sure that would be illegal as fuck, but you know, rich guys can pretty much do whatever they want. I mean, they could dress like a bat and chase bad guys all night, and people pretty much be like, yeah, that's cool. Despite the precautions, Calvin is pretty easily able to get into the building through the access fence for those fans, but it turns out the court was expecting him, and he is almost immediately captured and brought before the current Grand Master of the court, a guy named John Wycliffe, and his creepy-ass dead face. Seriously, what's with his face? Is it made of clay or something? Is he secretly Clayface? Why does it look so fake? I hate it. John Creepyface here doesn't seem to have much of a plan for Calvin, other than to just taunt him a bunch, really, claiming that he never really stopped working for the Court of Owls, and in fact is continuing to do their bidding. Because, turns out, Sebastian Clark is a member of the court. Or at least he was. He was the previous Grandmaster, the one who actually recruited Calvin as a Talon. This twist was actually already kind of given away in the fact that Clark's already a pretty owl-looking mofo, but also kind of given away in the Issue Zero prequel because, I mean, that's obviously him visiting Calvin at the circus, right? I mean, who else has owl face like that? Casey is also learning about Sebastian's secrets. Whoa. Sebastian's secrets. That sounds like an adult store. Ew. Anyway, growing suspicious of Sebastian, Casey investigates his home, and Sebastian made the mistake of using Securitas technology to protect his home. And so that makes it easy for Casey both to discover his secret owl mask, and once confronted by the ex-Grandmaster Owl, lock him away in his own closet. And he's not coming out that closet, so Casey just goes away. Calvin, meanwhile, manages to get away from Wycliffe thanks to having earlier talked one of the Talons at Securitas into helping him. But when Calvin gets back to Sebastian's hideaway, damn it, that also sounds like an adult store. When Calvin gets back to their secret base, he doesn't find Casey. He finds Bane. It seems Bane and Sebastian had secretly been working together all along, and Bane, unimpressed by Calvin, simply snaps the Talon's neck and leaves him for dead, bringing us to the end of the comic. Nah, just kidding, because he's a Talon, so he's simply revived as an undead agent of the court, like they do, with that dead-faced Wycliffe lording power over him by threatening to harm Sarah and Casey if Calvin doesn't obey his court masters. The mother and daughter pair were grabbed when they tried to leave Sebastian's house by that old bastardo, Felix Harmon. Because he is, of course, still alive and well. Well, undead and well. Undead life and well. You know what I mean. Despite Wycliffe's promises, it seems they've already clearly tortured Casey, even removing her freaking eye. Jesus. But without further options, Calvin agrees, so for his first mission, he's sent to kill Strix, the Talon from the Batgirl story from Night of the Owls, and current member of the Birds of Prey, which gives us a crossover with that series. But despite the story opening on Calvin killing his predecessor Talon, he just doesn't have that killer instinct, and so can't bring himself to kill Strix too. Fortunately, she provides an alternate solution, giving him a replacement body of another dead person to take back to the court in her place. This is an easy enough bait and switch since the court gave Calvin some chemical that is supposed to burn away necrotic flesh, which would completely melt away a Talon if used on them. That might be important later. Just saying. After having been supposedly successful on that mission, the court sends Calvin on another one, straight to Santa Prisca, home of Bane. For those unaware, Bane grew up on the prison island that is Santa Prisca, toughest prison in the world. And that's what made him that mountain of manly muscle that he is today. Well, that and growth hormones in the form of venom, but I'm sure that second thing had very little to do with it. Eventually, Bane came to conquer the island and became a militant revolutionary leader from there, raising his own personal army. An army of the roughest, toughest hombres south of the Rio Grande, including some soldiers that have been altered by Venom themselves. Before Calvin leaves for Santa Prisca, the court lets him meet with Casey privately, and uses the opportunity to get really romantic. Oh yeah, zombie kisses. We love those in comics. Of course, this was really just an excuse to slip Casey a lockpick so that she could free herself, which she immediately does, escaping into the Gotham Library above, as the Owl's super secret base was apparently just built under the library. Insert joke about hiding knowledge or something. Casey makes it as far as the GCPD, where she manages to signal Batman, but instead it's Felix Harmon who arrives. He continues torturing her, and though it's not clear what he does to her because of the art, maybe they just didn't want to show it in a comic book, it's apparently enough that later we'll see she ends up losing one of her arms. But Batman does end up showing up in time to save her life and hurts Harmon enough that the big bad runs away, leaving Batman to get Casey to a hospital. During her escape, Casey also managed to signal Anya and Joey, who had apparently escaped to just chillax on some beach somewhere. Casey sends them the info about Santa Prisca, so they show up there in time to help Calvin mess shit up, ruining Bane's plans for a Gotham conquest as they steal one of his jets to head back to Gotham and warn everybody about what is coming. Because that was Bane and Sebastian's goal, to conquer Gotham and take it back from the Owls. Bane provided the muscle in the form of an army, and Sebastian provided the funds, in the form of the funds he and Calvin stole from that bank in New York. With those plans ruined, a mysterious stranger shows up and offers Bane an alternative, which will lead to the events we saw in my Forever Evil Arkham War breakdown. So, you could go check that out. So, Bane terminates his partnership with Sebastian, seemingly permanently, when he smashes Sebastian's freaking head in. But don't worry, he's fine apparently, and just ends up trading Bane in for his lame off-brand undead version. That is to say, he partners with Harmon, and together they decide they're gonna burn this mother down! Burn it all down! Cause, as a rich guy, Sebastian's of the mindset that if he can't have Gotham, then no one can, and Harmon just likes mayhem. What can I say? He's living his truth. Unaware of their plans, Calvin and Batman have joined forces to hunt down the Court of Current Owls in an effort to find Sarah Washington, who was taken away to be subjected to evil brainwashing. I mean, O is for owl, that's just facts. What, does Batman have a problem with Sesame Street now? Eventually they realize the Owls are holed up in the Orchard Hotel, that same hotel from the beginning of the story, despite Eden being gone. But Calvin arrives at the hotel at the same time that Harmon and Sebastian decide to launch their attack on the same location. So the dastardly duo use the opportunity to also attack Calvin, leading to a giant showdown between Calvin, Felix Harmon, and a bunch of other talents sent by the court to stop both sides. Harmon easily defeats Calvin and starts to inject him with that necrotic flesh-destroying chemical that I mentioned might be important earlier, but Calvin is saved at the last moment by the appearance of Casey Washington and her crew, and Casey's new awesome robot arm. Aw shit, now that's metal. Casey uses friggin' laser beams that she can fire from her fancy new robot arm to rip Harmon into pieces, even pulling our favorite move from Night of the Owls and chopping off Felix the Owl's head. Then, convinced he's dying anyway from the amount of necrotic tissue destroying chemical he did get injected with, Calvin has Casey set him on fire so he can potentially not freeze when he uses a flash freeze grenade to take out all the remaining Talons in the room. Calvin then collapses, possibly dying, while everyone cleans up the rest of his mess. Sarah is recovered so that they can begin to deprogram her, which will eventually happen thanks to a cameo from longtime Batman ally Dr. Leslie Tompkins. And Batman himself captures Sebastian Clark, who will get thrown in jail with a promise that he'll face charges. Yeah, sure, rich people paying for their crimes. I'll believe it when I see it. To his own surprise, Calvin will eventually wake up inside Securitas Island, which Casey has regained control over after miraculously coming back to life. I mean, to the media, miraculous. We knew she was, you know what I mean. And Calvin also miraculously survives thanks to some medical magic where they were able to drain enough of the chemical out of Calvin to keep him alive. Well, keep him unalive. Keep him as a semi-living zombie, you know what I mean. They also revealed to him that while he was sleeping, Batman decided to induct their little group into Batman Incorporated. Oh yeah! Too bad Batman Incorporated is about to end, but maybe I've said too much. That's the end of Tynion's run on the series, but there are still 3 issues left. The first of those is a completely unrelated side story of the Talon that replaced William Cobb, and then we get straight back to 2 issues about Calvin. These issues, written by Tim Seeley, present Calvin as having trouble coping with being an undead zombie, especially with how the lack of feeling makes it too difficult to sense the tumblers inside locks when he's trying to pick them. Anya offers Calvin a chance to restore his life by taking a dip in a Lazarus pit that only she knows the location of. This brings them face to face with Lord Deathman, an old and rather silly Batman villain that was revamped in Grant Morrison's original Batman Incorporated series as an extremely disturbed, murderous psychopath who literally cannot die. So kinda like the Talons. This comic reveals that apparently the liquid in Lazarus pits is actually mined out of juices inside Lord Deathman. Very ew. They bathe in that. That shit was inside of him. So ew. Calvin and Anya arrive just as Lord Deathman has found a way to break out of his cage, and Calvin fights Lord Deathman while Anya fights the leader of the League of Assassins for the base, one Dr. Dark. That's 2 R's apparently, cause he's extra dark. The most notable part of the whole story is when Calvin throws a shark at Lord Deathman. I have to admit, I rather enjoy that moment. Who throws a shark? The story ends with Lord Deathman being caught again, Dr. Dark getting the secret to the unlife of Talons, and Calvin apparently being restored to life. That's weird. I guess they're saying they traded the means of reviving Talons for a little taste of Lord Deathman juice? Ugh, gross. Anyway, that's where the comic ends. The character does make a few appearances beyond this, but it's not particularly important for this video. So, let's just get to the breakdown. I definitely wouldn't call this a bad comic, but it's not a great comic, certainly. It feels like the plot kept getting short-circuited into different directions than it was originally going. Like how, while it was fairly obvious Clark was the court member who recruited Calvin, it doesn't feel like the comic was pushing toward him being evil. Or at least not pushing towards it happening so soon. Instead, it feels like the whole Bane tie-in was just to help build towards the event story they knew was coming in Forever Evil, something they probably didn't even need to do. And the entire comic feels pretty derailed from there. The same thing practically happens with the art. Guillaume Marc opens the comic, and I enjoy how expressive his characters are, and how detailed everything is. So it's a real shame when he leaves the series halfway through and we get a regular rotation of artists, with 5 different artists covering the remaining 10 issues. And it's not that they're bad, several even do a pretty good job, but the constant changing of artists just leans even further into the feeling of how disjointed this comic is. So I'm giving this series a recommendation level of medium. Overall, I'd consider this experiment of creating a new Court of Owls themed superhero a failure, but it's still strong enough a performance that Bat fans might just want to check it out. The collected editions get 1. O for Owl, 1. Secret History of the Court, and 1. Robot Arm. As always, that's moving from bad to good, because you know that robot arm be pretty sweet. That will then break down like this, with the first 2 icons going to the 2 actual volumes of the series, and that third icon going to the recent complete collection. Volume 1 has 8 issues and Volume 2 has 11. Both of them have some bonus sketch art and a bonus cover gallery. That third collection then has everything in the other 2, plus a new intro by Tynion, all in a single collection. It's a fancy pants collection for people with fancy pants. And if you're the kind of person who has a fancy pants collection, then you're in need of today's sponsor, Securitas Home Security. If you're like me, then you're tired of all these owls constantly getting in your house. Thankfully, Securitas leads the industry in anti-owl invasion technology. Use the link in the description below to sign up for a year-long subscription and get your first month completely free. A Securitas expert will come to your house and help you get set up with cutting-edge technology, like pressure plate cage traps, secret closets, underground tunnels that can flood on command, and robot arms that fire freaking laser beams. Just click the link in the description below and use coupon code CAPTAINSECURITY. Securitas. Protect your home and loved ones so you never have to find yourself asking, where the hell are my pants? My fancy pants. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please ignore the whole sponsorship thing, obviously it's a joke. There's lots more coming in the Batman-related sphere of comics ahead, including all the various actual Batman comics. So if you're looking forward to that, or you enjoyed this video, or you're just the nice person you know you are, then be sure to like and comment and subscribe so you can stick around for next time, and I hope to see you then, right here, in the Comic Cave.